Dave Kopel from the Independence Institute is with us. Dave, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So I want to talk to you about what's going on in Delaware, but I do have to ask you about the Piers Morgan interview because first of all, I thought you did a really good job
Thank you.
of trying to make your points when Piers Morgan really didn't want you to.
That's the nature of the game. You do not, when you do one of these shows, sometimes it's you can have something like Charlie Rose, and they just want to hear what you have to say, and other times, you're going into a stacked situation, and you just do the best you can under the circumstances.
Yeah, what's interesting, and you're right. I mean, different hosts obviously have different styles, but I did think it was interesting that Piers Morgan would ask you a question, you'd start to give him an answer. And apparently when he didn't like it, no, come on, that's just preposterous. That's outrageous. There was a real disconnect, and I guess there was a problem with Alan Dershowitz had a problem with this too. The idea that the United States is not the most violent a place in the civilized world. That studies have shown that actually countries
Scotland's way worse.
Absolutely.
According to the United Nations, which is not one of the classic gun lobby mouthpieces.
Exactly. In fact, Scotland is now going so far as to try to ban air guns. So a ban on firearms does not lead to increased public safety, nor does it lead to people feeling like they're safer.
No, I think in Scotland, and England and Wales is not as bad as Scotland, but it's not much better. And they have, as I said, since the mid-'90s, their total violent crime rate's been higher than in the U.S.
Absolutely. Gallup had a poll this week, and I think 90,000 people around the world they surveyed, and it was a question, do you feel safe walking down the street at night? And based on the media coverage, you would expect probably 20% of Americans to say they feel safe walking down the street at night. 75% of Americans said that they feel safe walking the streets at night. That is higher than England. That is higher than Scotland. That's higher than France. It's higher than Spain. It's higher than a lot of countries that have what we would consider to be more restrictive gun control laws.
Yes, and it's a big change in the United States since the mid-1970s, when I think our comparative data would have been a lot worse.
I think you're right. But, again, what we've seen during that same time period is not a lot of passage of gun control laws, but we have seen the expansion of right to carry. We've seen the number of right to carry holders grow to approximately 8 million now, according to the federal government. The media tells us that, the gun owners in this country have been on the march for the past 20 or 25 years.
That's true, but I would say that we have more, not gun control laws in the sense that the gun ban lobbies talk about, but we do have a lot more laws aimed at keeping guns out of the wrong hands, of which the National Instant Criminal Background Check System is the foremost, which, as you know, was supported by the National Rifle Association, and other things supported by the NRA about stricter sentences for convicted violent felons who then use a gun in another crime after they get out, things like that. I mean,
right.
There's a lot more incarceration in the United States than there used to be. And I think some of that is really misguided, like putting people in prison for marijuana. But some of it is definitely making us safer. Like we absolutely treat burglary, robbery, things like that much more severely than England or a lot of other countries do.
All right, so let's talk about this a case out of Delaware. We've been covering the story for a couple of years now, where I guess it started with the Cesar Rodney Institute. They did a series of investigative stories finding that the public housing authorities in Delaware had imposed gun bans on residents. There were a couple of housing authorities that, because of the media attention, revised their policies. They actually complied with the Constitution and dropped the bans on people possessing firearms in their apartments. But there was a lawsuit that had been filed. Jane Doe, filed a lawsuit in 2010 objecting to the Wilmington Housing Authority's ban on the, quote, display, use, or possession of firearms anywhere on public housing property. They revoked the ban, but they had this new policy that heavily restricted the use. The plaintiffs continued to challenge the amended regulations, specifically objecting to the prohibition of firearms in common areas, such as daycare facilities, libraries, laundry rooms, administrative offices, and community rooms. U.S. District Judge Leonard Stark of the District of Delaware ruled that those regulations do not violate the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution this week.
Yes. So let's talk about the important progress that's been made.
Okay.
Right after Heller was announced, there were still a number of very regressive, discriminatory public housing authorities which said if you're going to live in one of our apartments, you can't have any gun. The NRA put pressure on, and, for example, the San Francisco Housing Authority changed its policies in response to that.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise, in Delaware, they've changed. If you live in public housing in Delaware, and, of course, if you can lawfully possess a gun, then you can possess a gun in your apartment. And you can likewise possess the gun, in your car on the way to go to the shooting range to practice and in the parking lots and things like that. So that key thing has been fixed. And that is by far the most important thing is can you have a gun or not? And, can it be loaded and can you use it for self-defense?
Right.
All those things we won on. What this case is about a remainder thing, which is as that list you led of the laundry areas and the playrooms and wherever they play cards and things like that. And Delaware, the Wilmington Housing Authority, still bans guns there. That was upheld, and I'd argue that might not be the correct decision. But if we still won 90% of what's important and 100% of what's most important before this case even began. What this case says is the judge says, well, here's District of Columbia versus Heller. What instructions do I draw from it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is the Second Amendment, is that only in the home, as the Brady campaign and Michael Bloomberg claim, or does it also include the right to bear arms outside of your home? The court says, we're not going to decide that one way or the other, but we're going to assume for purposes of this case. Let's just assume that you do have a right outside your home. If that's true, then does the common areas gun ban violate the Second Amendment? And the court's answer to that is no, it doesn't. Because remember, the Heller decision says, in essence, that you, just like there's an exception that, while Americans in general have a right to own guns, there's an exception for convicted felons and the mentally ill. Likewise, it says there's a right to carry, to bear, but not in sensitive places, as the court says, such as schools or government buildings. So we know there's a properly interpreted, Heller says there's a right to carry, but there's not a right to carry in sensitive places, and we have two examples of what a sensitive place is. The Delaware Federal District Court says the common areas are sensitive places. Well, how do you know they're sensitive places? Oh, because there's a lot of people there. Now, I think that's an awfully excessively broad reading of sensitive places. Shopping malls have a lot of people there, but I think it would be very wrong to say that those are, assuming it was a government-owned shopping mall somehow, rather than or a public park.
Right. Right.
I think it would be wrong to say that guns can be banned there. But anyway, that's what the federal district court there says. It's a sensitive place because there's a lot of people.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, Dave, I know that the courts are going to be litigating these issues. We've got a lot of cases dealing with, the scope of the Second Amendment. We'll certainly have you on again soon to talk about any updates, but appreciate you coming on the program tonight, sir.
And folks out there, please give money to the NRA and the NRA Civil Rights Legal Defense Fund, which supports a lot of these cases. And as you say, it's going to go up to the Court of Appeals next, and there's a lot of legal fighting that has to be done about the boundaries of the Second Amendment.
Absolutely right. Dave Kopel, thank you so much, sir. Talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks.